Okay, now this isn't the first time that I tried to make this video, but I thought that the first draft looked a little shitty, so I decided to do it again. Now, I've been playing the games a bit more recently, in the sense that I'm going back slowly to actually enjoying them. And I was playing two games one day, in particular Red Dead 2 and Dying Light 2, and I just found myself going from one game to the other within a short time span, and I'm like, what else am I gonna play today? And then I looked at the rest of my library and I'm like, oh, I should play Devil May Cry a little bit, because I'm like very close to finishing the trilogy, the original trilogy that is. And that got me thinking for a little bit. Well, at least added more fuel to the flame, in the sense that I've had this idea for a while, and that's that open world games should honestly just hit the back burner for a little bit. Like, let's bring back linear experiences. And one thing that was kind of the catalyst for this is hearing about the Splinter Cell and Dead Space remakes. And it got me thinking, like, this is a good way to bring them back to relevance. I'm sure y'all already know about my remakes and remasters video. But it got some people to wonder how the Splinter Cell remake in particular was going to be handled, because Ubisoft games as of late were mostly open world, with the exception of Rainbow Six Extraction. And it just made me think about how oversaturated the open world is, the open world market, especially with Ubisoft, who also made the Rainbow Six series. And it's even crazy to think about, because the Ghost Recon series started out as a linear experience up until Wildlands, I believe, and then they had it open world, and then they kept it going with Breakpoint, if I'm not mistaken, and we all know how that went. And that also leads to another thing. Open world games are typically associated with grindathons. You know, I mean, we've already had Gotham Knights, Dying Light 2 to a certain degree, and the Assassin's Creed series starting with Origins, along with the Ghost Recon series with Wildlands and Breakpoint. And that's just boring, and it's in the sense that it's overly repetitive. And it's disappointing, because open world games in theory should be able to retain more people. Now, there are games that are open world and are pretty successful, like the aforementioned Red Dead 2, Dying Light 2, and also Cyberpunk 2077, which I haven't played, but I am looking into, because I've heard that Cyberpunk 2077 is pretty alive in terms of open world. Red Dead 2 I can vouch for, because you can hear people having conversations that keep going, your character can interact with them, there's so many lines of dialogue, and even some options throughout story missions, which I really like. And the same can be said for The Witcher 3 to a certain degree. But I still think that we should have more linear experiences on the table for us. And to start, let's bring up a game that I mentioned before, the Devil May Cry series. And so, this was brought to my attention by a friend of mine, which I genuinely appreciate, because honestly, there are games that you use to turn your brain off, and there are games that you just have slapstick fun with. Devil May Cry is certainly one of them. The original Devil May Cry, the first one, is really good. That's the basis and the foundation really solid. Devil May Cry 2 puts a flimsy ass house on top of it. Devil May Cry 3 said, fuck it, we're gonna completely tow over that house and then build a better one. And I say that in the sense that the third game brings back most, if not all, the moves from the first game, and also expands upon the concepts that were created in the second game. Now, that said, I still have to finish the game. I'm on chapter 4, but I still think it's going to be a fun time. Other games in this list that I've compiled is the Ghost Recon series. For the earlier games in particular, Ghost Recon Future Soldier, because I saw it on sale on Steam earlier, and I remembered how cool I thought it was. Because you're a futuristic soldier, or a soldier with futuristic technology that has a suit that can turn invisible. Like, who doesn't think that would be really cool as an idea? And that's another thing, Ubisoft used to be one for good ideas, but sometimes they can execute it terribly, like in Watch Dogs Legion, which I also have on the list. Why Watch Dogs Legion? because I found it to be pretty boring after about 5 hours of playtime. 5 to 8, give or take. And it sucks because the concept around it, the idea of being able to recruit nearly every NPC that you see, is really cool. And that could have been expanded upon. But the thing is that if you don't put the effort in it, it could have major narrative problems. And that's exactly what happened, which ultimately leads to a less immersive experience, despite how detailed the open world may be. Some other games that I have, the Star Wars Force Unleashed series, which is, it's a power fantasy. You should know if you've played the games. And so the other ones that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to linger on a little bit, starting with Dead Space. Dead Space 2008 is one of the best games I've ever played and is a breath of fresh air as of today. And I'm super happy that I at least got one of my friends to try it out and are anticipating more. That said, I still want to play the sequel to the game, and also 3, despite the negative reception that that game's had. And I just love everything about Dead Space. Like, I want to draw Isaac Clarke soon. And the thing that drives it for me is the dismemberment system that they have, the world building that you can see with your own eyes, even in the 2008 version, and just the set piece in general. Like, you're inside of a ship that is practically abandoned because of all the bad shit that's happened with the necromorphs up until the very end, which I don't want to spoil in case anybody has wants to play it, but it's genuinely something to behold, and the twist at the end is, it shakes you up a bit. Another game that I have on the list that I want to talk about for a little bit, which is linear as well, Ghostrunner. I've talked about this game at least a little bit before, and I just can't praise that game enough for how awesome the concept is of being a heavily skill-based game where you're a ninja cyborg basically, and you're just cutting through people, literally. Like, it's just one hit and they're down. The only catch, you're also one hit. So it's this really big challenge of using speed, momentum, and just quick reflexes to your advantage in order to go through the levels and beat the game, which is really fun. Ghostrunner is very fast in the sense of being locomotion focused, but a game that is more reaction focused is Sifu. This is also another game that I've talked about a little bit at length, and it's another experience that you might have if you're willing to put the time for it, because Sifu, I will say, is not for everybody. I'm just gonna say it right now. Sifu requires a lot of precise timing in order for you to beat the levels, but that's also what makes it more satisfying in the sense that it actually has challenge, similar to Dark Souls. And Ghostrunner, as mentioned before. Doom 2016 is also another one that's just immediate balls to the walls chaos. Like, you're literally fighting demons from hell, which is as badass as it sounds, and also the soundtrack punctuates it, but talking about soundtrack is something that I'm going to want to talk about later. And there's also the Last of Us series. The Last of Us 1, great game. The narrative in particular is what pushed me into finishing it, as with most people. In fact, more so than the second game, because the second game's themes are pretty generic and the writing there is terrible. But the first game really nails it, and the ending, as many people have talked about, deserves a lot of appraisal. And if you're somebody that's into like parenthood or what it means to grow a relationship, that's definitely the game for you. But this is not to say that open world games are just strictly bad. I'm just saying that I'm tired with how saturated the market is with those games. I mean, we've already had like Horizon Forbidden West and so on. Well, I don't want to completely alienate that because I've heard some good things about the Horizon series. But still, there's so many good games that are linear that I think people might want to try out. Not to mention some other ones that I may not have brought up before, like not The Last of Us, but the Uncharted series, which both that series and The Last of Us is made by Naughty Dog. There's the earlier Ghost Recon games, as I mentioned before, and probably a few other games that might slip my mind, but I'm sure you'll find. And that's kind of about it. I wanted to make it a bit more condensed, but I also want to leave a few notes in terms of like what I'm playing. Still playing The Last of Us 2 and also Devil May Cry 3, as some of you might know. But I actually do want to continue with the Devil May Cry series, but I still want to get my tuition payment done. But that said, again, I want to play Dead Space 2, but also the Left 4 Dead series, both Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2, because I've seen a bit of gameplay from it recently and it looks pretty fun. And also I got Iron Lung on Steam. It's an indie game, but the specs are really low and my brother told me to see it, so I might just give that one a go. And another game that I'm excited for is Hogwarts Legacy. I don't know if I mentioned it, and it's ironic, I know, because I just got on about open world, but that's just shows that there's a bit of redemption in a sense, because I've heard some good things about Hogwarts Legacy, not to mention the huge amount of appraisal. And also, if you call me a massive bigot or you say I'm very discriminatory about gender or something just because I want to play Hogwarts Legacy, I don't care. But I'm still very excited. And also, just don't attack people that just want to play something despite the connotation that it might have. I've talked about it at length, so I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. But I just want to enjoy some nice, fun inside Hogsmeade and Hogwarts, okay? And if you're gonna shoot me in the foot, shoot yourself in the foot instead, because going off on somebody for something they like is fucking stupid. Unless it's something that's genuinely and directly harmful towards other people and themselves. But yeah, I'll just see everybody around. And just a side note, I'm gonna have a link to the scrapped version of this video, because it's gonna allude to some other things that I want to talk about as well. But it is gonna be delisted, so yeah.